little boy you choked ain't no bigger than this. How could a grown man choke a little boy around the neck and he's being harassed by other students? They're getting ready to get into it. The school's out of control, but you chose him? You know, I get a call, and one of my former students from Hilltop in middle school now, going to a charter school, ends up being choked by a teacher. And all I thought about is, and he's special needs, and all I thought about is our children in the city are just catching hell from all in, and leadership seemingly does not care. And I'm saying now to school officials, don't handle this. I'm doing everything that I can to try to stay out of the way, because when I intervene on behalf of an individual child, then they hold it against that child. So I feel oftentimes like it's doing more harm than good. But don't handle this. And I will handle it. It will be handled one way or another.
Yeah. Issue is, you have individuals who want conduct unbecoming of officers taken out that bill. Yeah. Right? This falls under conduct unbecoming. They don't want this to go before a civilian review board if we pass it here. And in the words of the FOP president here in Wilmington, he said if the state introduced their substitute bill, it's nothing but fluff.
This is Dr. Curry.
This is Kobe Owens.
J Street.
And welcome to The Source. Fellas, listen, I don't know what's going on in the Wilmington Police Department, but every time we turn around, beyond the shootings, there's some administrative stuff crazy going on. This week it was reported in the News Journal that a police officer, 30 years old, was indicted with some nude photos with a person from Kingswood Community Center. What in the world is happening? What's happening?
Well, first off, you said you don't know what's going on with the Wilmington Police Department. It's in complete disarray. It's in failed leadership under Chief Tracy, under Mayor Pazicki, and is supposed to have some oversight from the City Council Public Safety Committee, which is chaired by Loretta Walsh, and all three of them are failing right now. Incident after incident keeps happening, and now I'm really fired up about this because this has affected children.
Yes.
Where are they going to draw the line and stop grandstanding to save their own behinds and actually start doing something to address the issue? It is no reason why we should have a sexual predator on our police department and then assign to a community center.
Okay, but I think we need to explain exactly what happened.
Okay.
And you've got a juvenile, a 15-year-old, being approached by this police officer. He gets her number, puts her phone number in his phone as Youngin.
Yeah.
Is calling her, got messages going back and forth, but then he sends this photo of himself, and it gets in the way of what's reported in the press of a situation where the victim has her parents have called about an incident that happened that had nothing to do with the cop, and he arrives, and so then she takes it all back and says that it didn't happen because she didn't want to deal with him. And then when he left, she explained to her parents that the reason that she recanted initially on the initial problem that had nothing to do with him, it was because of him. But it's just outrageous. Now, for 3 weeks in a row, sitting on this show, we've had police misconduct as a topic of conversation. Week before last, we had the situation where the officer who banged the young man's head in the wall in Southbridge. Last week we had the situation where we have a sergeant who was a former spokesman for the department, posting inappropriate things about Asians and Black Lives Matter on her Facebook. And then this week we've got a serious allegation of a situation where this police officer could get up to 26 years in prison for what he tried to do with this little girl. And you got a police department that's raging out of control. And worse, the 3 situations that we covered over the last 3 weeks, in those 3 weeks alone, haven't heard anything from the mayor. You haven't heard anything from the police chief. And I don't know what other city officials are doing. So it's, whatever happens, happens. And how can you as a mayor of this town have a police officer who is accused of trying to solicit sex with a minor and you say nothing?
Well,
the FOP weighs in. When the article went up on WDEL, it initially said Wilmington police officer indicted. And then they called in, and WDEL put it up, said that because of the call from the FOP, they put up former Wilmington police officer. But he was a Wilmington police officer until February 22nd.
Absolutely.
And to put it in some context, right? When the young lady called the police and when child services went out to the house, that was December 2nd.
Yeah.
And then December 3rd, they came out to the house, and then following that, that's when she was able to say it was him. And Wilmington Police, Chief Tracy and Mayor Pazicki kept him on the force, did not fire him, kept him on the force and let him resign on February 22nd. And that is my issue with this.
Well, I understand that issue, and it's very serious. But the other issue I have, you've got the victim who's alleging sexual assault, according to what's in the paper, by somebody else that had nothing to do with it. She recanted that in front of, because of this police officer. You just tainted the sexual assault case that happened initially, because any dime store lawyer is going to question the victim's credibility and try to do whatever he or she can to blame the victim. So she's been harmed in several ways by the action of this police officer, and it's just outrageous. And neither the mayor, the police chief, or the FOP have expressed any outrage about any of these incidents that we've been talking about. But yet, as Kobe so eloquently has said, they were, and you, Pastor, have eloquently said how they had no problem jumping up and down, screaming and crying foul about what Councilwoman Sinead Darby had to say.
Exactly, right? And in this whole timeline, right, the officer met this young girl in March 2020. And then until today, we're still dealing with this. But yet the FOP haven't said anything about his actions, hasn't said anything about Officer Waters beating Mr. Brown's head in over South Bridge. No.
Haven't said anything about the Facebook post.
The Facebook post. But what they did say is that if Councilwoman Sinead Darby keeps posting about what keeps happening, right? Posting the news, informing the community, then she should just come out and say she hates cops.
This is just
That's
ridiculous.
what they equated that to.
But go ahead. You go ahead.
So here's another thing. The FOP and John Rago and the mayor were very quick to put out a statement against Council President Trippy Congo when he talked about the trophy, the whitest black guy trophy. So
the whitest black guy.
Right, on the force. Now, if y'all can put out statements like that, and don't think I'm just upset to be upset, but the fact that y'all are sitting there silent with a child predator and y'all still playing politics shows that you truly don't care what's going on in this community.
Let's make a correction. Because I don't want to ever be unfair. We're going to bring you reliable news. They did make a statement. They made a statement, and I'm going to read their statement to you. The Wilmington Police Department spokesman spoke up, and he said, David, Karras said, Cooper's last day of employment was February 22nd, 2022. They did say something.
Who is they? See, I'm in your church, and I don't want to do and say the wrong thing, but whatever that person's name is not Przicki. Whatever that person's name is not Tracy, and whatever that person's name is not a member of city council. It's not president of the FOP.
Right.
And let me say this: David can put out as many statements as he's want. He's a nice little, spokesperson for the department. Yeah. But they didn't let him speak out when it had to do with Council President Congo or Councilwoman Darby. They spoke out. They felt the need that it was so important to let the community know where they stood on this. Why are they so silent now?
Because this is something that speaks to, it was a reflection of their administration.
Yeah, it's a failed administration.
And again, I'm most outraged because it was a 15-year-old girl. I don't care.
17 now.
Now she's 17. Right. But when it started up, I believe she was 15.
Correct.
But regardless, the cop knew that she was a youngin'.
And told her to keep it secret.
And it's all in there. Keep it. So he knew he was wrong.
Yes.
All right.
But my problem is, separate and apart, or in addition to everything you said, why in the news release would the city release the details of the allegation of sexual assault? Okay, because you've tainted that situation.
Right. You said that.
And I just think it's outrageous, and all I see is a police department that's raging out of control with no relief in sight, and it's just ridiculous. Can
I just say this to you, those of you who watch us every week, and we try our best to give you what is happening in the community, and one of the things I want to give credit to Jay Street is that he said we need to make sure you all are clearly aware, because oftentimes we report news thinking that you're reading the paper or that somebody may have had it out there and you're not aware. A police officer, a 30-year-old police officer, engaged a young 15-year-old at the time, she's now 17 years old, girl, and he did some sexual acts. He took nude pictures of himself, had on the police uniform when sending some of these pictures. And what happens too often is that it only is permitted in the poor black and brown communities. Had this happened in one of the communities where Przicki lives, it would have been dealt with so swiftly. There would have been statements put out, and the cop, and the only reason why we probably hearing it at all is because the officer was black. Because it seemed like it came out much quicker, but it did not come out with responses. And the mayor, I like you, sir, but you owe this community leadership. You owe this community leadership. You have to be able to stand in front of the camera and say to the people, your zip code is not what is important to me. It's who you are as a part of humanity. And for you not to have anything to say, this person felt free. With this Leopold, we're going to have to deal with that too, because there's too much hiding going on, and we have to get that Bill of Rights dealt with in the state.
Now. You opened
it up now. Because all of this is a result of what the administration saying we can't do this because Leopold is stopping us from doing that.
What is Leopold?
Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, and I wasn't going to speak on it, but you opened the door to that one. Look, right now, we've been talking about SB 149 for a long time.
What is that?
It's the Law Enforcement Bill of Rights amendment. It creates civilian review boards, and it also opens up public misconduct records. Now, what is going on right now? There are people who are pushing to substitute this bill, especially the police council, police chiefs council for the state, who don't want public to see the records, the misconduct records. Under this case, if it wasn't put out in a news journal and he wasn't indicted, the public would have never known about it because of Leopold, right? Other things with that, the police have shown time and time again, you cannot investigate yourself. Wherever you work, whether you're a social worker, you're a nurse, a doctor, you go amongst your peers, but then there's also an outside oversight as well, too. The police does not have that here in Delaware, and that's why we want civilian review boards. We want them so that they have the power to investigate claims like this and make sure that the community is aware and that the proper actions are being taken forth. But this isn't just the only incident. It's been a ton recently that should be handled, that shows implicit and explicit biases, that shows conduct unbecoming of officers. Issue is, you have individuals who want conduct unbecoming of officers taken out that bill.
Yeah.
Right? This falls under conduct unbecoming. They don't want this to go before a civilian review board if we pass it here. And in the words of the FOP president here in Wilmington, he said if the state introduced their substitute bill, it's nothing but fluff. So he either agrees that they're giving false hopes if they do this substitute bill and not pass, well, he didn't say pass the original one. He doesn't want it at all. But he pretty much said if they do the substitute, which is supposed to be the watered down version to get people on board, it's not going to do anything.
Well, let me just add to this and just say this. We all have relationships with politicians. We all have relationships with people. But state representatives, senators, you need to hear the largest city in the state of Delaware. This Leopold issue cannot be handled the way it has been handled. I'm being careful. I'm measuring my words. This is a disgrace, representatives, state representatives, especially the one who's leading it. We need to protect our people. They are public servants. Once upon a time, cops were honorable. We want to make sure we keep the public trust. What has occurred in the last 3 incidents that we have reported here was a betrayal of public trust. And it's being hidden, other than when a news journal decide they're going to bring it out, or we find out something and we bring it out, because of this Bill of Rights. Unacceptable. And if you do care for humanity, state representatives, or TER, and whoever else needs to hear this, you need to make sure you don't do a substitute bill. You need to pass the appropriating bill to give the rights.
I disagree.
You have that right.
And the reason I disagree is because a substitute, what's on the table, none of it is going to be as effective as what they did in Maryland, and that's repeal the whole thing. And you can jump on one state representative. You and I have different opinions, but the fact of the matter is, when you play this game, when you're doing what you're doing, you got to go find the votes. And in this House of Representatives that's controlled by a former police officer, controlled by the police, they're not going to find the vote.
But go down fighting, though. I'm going to let you go. But go down fighting.
Well, if you're going to go down fighting, put in the repeal.
No. Put it to repeal in. But do not be looked upon as carrying the water. Because right now, persons that we admire and look up to is being viewed as the one who's carrying the water to keep it from going anywhere.
He's not carrying the water for me. But if you look at our current House of Representatives and the Speaker of the House, in 2020, he called for black people to be arrested for simply protesting, right?
Right.
For peacefully walking down the street. He called for me to be arrested if anything went wrong with our protest. But he sits silent when his fellow officers do these acts, these hideous acts against community and against the public trust, right? Then he deputizes one of his former FOP buddies, who's a state rep, to lead the law enforcement task force. And then he goes around, and he just recently said this, he goes around and says not one community advocate has ever reached out to talk to him. Though that's not true, because we had him sitting right here, and he didn't want to talk to me. We've gone to the meetings. The only thing I ever talked about was putting the slot machines in the racetrack. That was 20-something years ago. So, we have this issue where we have people in power, right, who look like us, but are not standing with our community. But then we have some people down there who are fighting hard. Yeah. We have people like Sherry Dorsey Walker and Senator Marie Pickney, who got their bills that deal with use of force over the finish line. So we still have some advocates down there, but we need to come together as a community and say, this does not mean we hate police. This does not mean we want to defund the police. This means it's time to say that it's a systematic issue with what's going on here in Delaware and across this nation, and we have to address this in a way that's proactively looking to stop the lack of accountability when it happens in our community, when it involves a police officer.
We could save some people.
But you sat there in the governor's office and got the agreement for the cameras, but there's no policy on how the video footage is to be released and how it's to be handled. And everybody's playing hide and go seek with the body camera program. And while you have the undivided attention of the senators and representatives, somebody needs to put in legislation that says you release it when it's controversial and the community wants it within 24, 48 hours, something.
Well, I'll call Sherry. She'll do it. She's been our hero.
Yeah.
I'll call her and say, put it in, and we're gonna see if she can put it in. But one of the things that he said that's so true
all the
is
things that we talked about today, with the exception of Facebook, the Facebook post, they could have been resolved if the body camera footage was available and somebody was looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the public had access to it.
Well, not the police officer in Wilmington. That wouldn't have been resolved because he
if he had his body camera on all the time,
if they
like
were
he
checking
supposed to,
him like they were supposed to, like the law.
But he may have just got home when he did his stuff.
No, I'm talking about Officer Waters. He kept turning his off.
Almost definitely.
Right?
Most
it's a
definitely
policy in place.
But I'm talking about
it's
this former
supposed to be
cop,
on.
the former cop here who done this child. This is a young minor child who's mentally is messed up at this point. I'm sure her case where somebody else may have abused her is now tainted, and I think it's all a part of mismanagement, and it needs to be corrected. You may say, well all you're all doing is reporting news. Trust me, we're keeping the journal for reasons, and we're going to continue. Elections is coming, and I'm glad to hear who's in charge on the city council of the police. That's our best friend who's been there for 400 years. What's her name again?
Loretta Walsh.
Oh, okay. I didn't say her name, but she's been there. She's the most favorite, get the most votes in the city. Enough is enough. At some point, we have to say we will not sell our souls to people who will not protect us. She should be speaking out. She should be telling the mayor, if you want to keep one of my votes, if you want to keep my vote, you're going to have to do something with this police department. It is not happening, and we're not going to go away. It needs to happen. I want to turn out. You want to say something? I'm going to turn our attention to something else.
But I realize we're in church, but I want to make you all a bet now, and I want to change my position on something we said previously. Mm-hmm. I said that the police officer that hit the man's head in the wall is going to go to jail. I'll bet you now, the only one that's going to go to jail is this officer.
Yeah, well, you ain't got to bet me that.
Instant matter. I bet you he's the only one going to go to jail.
Well, you ain't got to bet me that because I can't.
So you won't take the bet?
We're going to be on the same page. So therefore, unless we're going to take each other to lunch, I know that's not going to happen. And that's a disgrace before God. But when the black folks bring up an issue, we are troublemakers. We are problems. When the other folks, the minority race, bring up issues, this is a genuine concern. It has to stop. And I will not go away. We will not go away. We will continue in this vein.
I'm walking in the steps of my ancestors. John Lewis said, get in necessary trouble, get in good trouble. Yes. So that's what I love doing.
And that's why I was saying, even for the representative who won't get into good trouble, it's time to get into good trouble. Let me move our attention to one more case where something happened in Delaware. A man who was wanted for child rape. And he had a medical event. A lot of things happened in this, and I only know. I tried to look up to see what he looked like, but I wasn't able to see him. But the Delaware Online reported that this man was picked up after the police had a tip on where he was. Uneventful. There was no issue. They gently put him in the front seat of the car, and as they were traveling towards the precinct, he had as they called it, a medical event, which was a heart attack, and he died.
First off, even before we get to this case, when have you ever heard of someone who's being arrested, put in the front seat of the car, and make the other officer get in the back seat?
When you're white. I'll just say it.
There you go.
Because that would not have been black. No.
So he gets arrested.
Yeah.
And it's for some kind of child molestation.
Yeah,
and he gets to ride shotgun with Popo. Get the heck out of here.
And this is what's concerning, right? This happened down in Milton, right? It was Troop 3 in Camden, actually was the ones who picked him up.
Yeah.
But he's a Milton man, 72 years old, and then he ended up passing away. But that's unacceptable. He should have been in the backseat, handcuffed, and thrown under the prison.
Oh, not Mr. Johnny. Until he is proven guilty, we will treat him with the utmost respect. What is wrong with you guys? We will not treat Mr. What was his name?
Stanley Bradley.
Mr. Bradley, you said?
Yeah.
We will not treat him in such a way. We will have dignity. We will show what we are about as police officers. Had he been black, wanted for raping a girl, let me tell you straight up, he would have been thrown without the head being protected into the back of the car. And if he would have said that he had a medical emergency, they would have said, we'll deal with that when we get you to the precinct.
Well, and when you compare that to one of the incidents that's transpired here in the city, and the person needed medical attention because the dog was sick on him.
Yeah.
Basically, that the police intervened and stopped him from getting the medical attention that he thought he needed. So, you know, the fundamental unfairness continues, and it's just outrageous. And until there's new leadership in the police department to get rid of the improprieties that people feel comfortable in committing. In the situation we've talked about the most today, how do you have somebody investigated by the Attorney General's office over a 2-month period of time? How is that person still on the street while they're being investigated?
We don't know what his Bill of Rights are. His Bill of Rights may be you got to keep him on the street. His Bill of, which I don't think that is true. I'm just being facetious. But listen, I have an issue with he resigned. Well, which means they did nothing until he chose, I need to go ahead and resign.
Well, I'm just hoping that from December, whenever they picked it up and started the investigation, till February 22nd, that he wasn't on the street, that he was on some kind of administrative leave.
Well, you'll never know.
Because of...
Unfortunately, because of Leopold, we will never know that.
Yeah, we'll never know that.
Unless it comes out in discovery.
And I think the more we expose this stuff, the more cops and people will begin to think before they act. A 15-year-old, he's double her age. You mean to tell me you felt the gall? You felt that you could just do this? I mean, we done went back to a story we done finished up on, and it's a culture. There's a Greek word called ethos, E-T-H-O-S. It deals with the culture of a thing. The police department must feel the right to do what they want to do. And this is unfair. This is unfair, and something has to change. But something must change.
You know, Pastor, I've been thinking in preparation for the show today, and I'm gonna throw something else in this. You know, I get a call, and one of my former students from Hilltop in middle school now, going to a charter school, ends up being choked by a teacher. And all I thought about is, and he's special needs, and all I thought about is our children in the city are just catching hell from all in, and leadership seemingly does not care. And I'm saying now to school officials, don't handle this. I'm doing everything that I can to try to stay out of the way, because when I intervene on behalf of an individual child, then they hold it against that child. So I feel oftentimes like it's doing more harm than good. But don't handle this, and I will handle it. It will be handled one way or another. Yeah.
Well, you made a comment, and we're going to move on, but you're absolutely correct. The reason why the anger is so serious and our indignation is so strong is because it is What's going on?
It's a little boy you choked. Ain't no bigger than this. How could a grown man choke a little boy around the neck and he's being harassed by other students? They're getting ready to get into it. The school's out of control, but you chose him?
And the reason why is because they know that that little poor black child does not have the legal representation that another child would have.
Trust me.
Oh, but that's what the thought pattern is. You're going to help them. But it becomes, we can treat them like animals because they don't have anyone to defend them. Their politicians have sold them out. Their leaders have received the chicken sandwiches instead of being taught how to raise chickens and continue to live forever. This is what the other community see and understands. They call some of us into their offices, not us. They call some into the office, and we're going to talk about this whole $55 million that Wilmington received and how they're going to spend it, because it leads us to that. They've been given certain monies, and they don't want to help. They just want to prostitute. So our children are suffering from this young girl who a police officer saw that he could just violate her, make her a woman before her time, and the same with this young man that you're talking about who can just be choked because we're not going to be held accountable. There's cameras in all these schools now. They don't care about any of that stuff.
And the charter school saying they don't have cameras, and you can look outside and see the cameras. But I want to raise one more thing, and this ain't about me, and I'm not crying about me, but it is about me. And this has nothing to do with Mayor Pizicki. Goes all the way back to January 9, 1978. How can the city of Wilmington as a city be the only city in the United States of America that has no responsibility and no authority over the educational destiny of its own children? And why is it that the city as a city has stood idly by and let what Mr. Redden, Lenny Williams, Irv Morris, and Hicks Anderson put in place in terms of the Coalition to Save Our Children in me? Why has the coalition and those that have worked with me been the only entity that has stepped forward and fought for our children? And is this administration and this city council going to stand up, and you're getting ready to talk about $55 million, and do something on behalf of the educational destiny of its own children?
If it doesn't affect my child, who cares? And that's what the problem is. I'm gonna stick to it, and I'm not gonna get off my little song here. Black and brown kids doesn't matter, because if they did, we would get responses, we would see some action. But you've been in this fight a long time.
But you sit there as a sitting city council person, and you say part of the problem is the kids going to these crummy schools. What in the hell have you as a government done or said or even mentioned about the crummy schools? And why should the Coalition to Save Our Children and the few people that have worked with me over the years be the only entities that are dealing with this?
Because we're so busy getting grant money for this, that, and the other in our district, staying in good rapport with the mayor, making sure he doesn't cut us off, then that's what we do. We don't care about what y'all talking about on that show.
But every time we run
I'm trying to answer his questions.
Every time we run into a school situation, the school districts and the schools, the first thing that the school did was call their lawyer. Okay, they're armed up with lawyers and law firms, and our kids are armed with lay advocates. And we just can't continue down this road. And I want to respectfully suggest to all the city officials, if the city, as the government, doesn't step forward and protect its own children, then who will?
Well, the advocates will continue to do what they do, but until we get a new government, one who cares, and then next time when the Lord bless us, or when we are fortunate to have a mayor who cares about people, and we can find a way to make sure we get a city council that cares about people, so change can come.
But it's worse than that, okay? And this had nothing to do with Mayor Pizicki, because he didn't do this either. But when we first desegregated, there was an agreement between the city and the schools that the schools would not have to pay city and water bills. In exchange, they would have space in the schools for evening recreational and tutorial activities. That agreement has been nullified, and every school in the city was a rec center and had activities for children after school. None of it exists now. And the children have nothing to do, and you wonder why they're running up and down the street, and all of a sudden we've got crime rates going through the roof with our young people, our teenagers. And if we're not a part of the solution, we as a city and as a government, then who is? Okay, the previous administration had nothing to do with Mayor Pazicki. Matter of fact, it was the Baker administration. For example, the money I was getting for after evening activities at Hilltop, that was community development block grant money. Baker administration made a decision that they weren't going to give the nonprofits anymore, would not help us, and that all that money was going to go into housing. And now we've got a scandal with the housing. But Mayor Pazicki didn't do that. That happened under the Baker administration. My point being, the city, as a government, has continuously failed our children over a long period of time. And I'm going to say what Dick Gregory said at the University of Delaware in the 70s when I was there. When these rights are denied by a system of government over long periods of time, it is your duty to destroy or abolish that system of government. And of course, that was his version of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Well, we've been talking about several things going on with our local news, and we decided we're going to not even worry about the national news. I want to continue on and talk about how Wilmington will spend $55 million of pandemic relief fund money. And the federal government gave this money to the city of Wilmington in order to support different efforts as a result of the pandemic. What has happened, a lot of lack of accountability has occurred with this money, not just in Wilmington, but just about everywhere. But we're more concerned about Wilmington. When I read the article in the News Journal this week about no plan, we'll let you know when we're doing it, it speaks to slush money. And I get concerned. I need to know, and we'll open up on whatever areas y'all want to talk about, what is the process for getting money from this relief fund? No one can answer that question for me, yet I see in the report that several organizations received already some good money. Let me just share a couple of them, and he's going to put these on the screen for you to see. Woodlawn Trustees, you were sharing with me that they got $2 million. You were sharing with me
they're getting more.
They're going to get more, and they have houses throughout the city of Wilmington.
Not just by the Woodlawn Library area.
Okay.
But it's all affordable housing.
It's all affordable housing.
It's all affordable housing.
So you feel that may be legitimate?
I have a lot of confidence in the integrity of the Woodlawn Trustees and its commitment to working towards affordable housing. That's just my opinion. All
right, then they said Central Baptist CDC. Is that Central Baptist Church over here on? Yes. They got $250,000, $250,000 for rehabilitate 10 houses on the east side. Do we know anything about that project?
I don't know about it, but if it's for houses, I don't have a problem with it. Okay, and if you're opening up to entities to help people who, Kobe brought this up, the fact that it appears that we have more renters in this city now than we do have homeowners. And if some of this work is being done, some of this money is being done to get people who might not otherwise be able to qualify a mortgage, to get them as homeowners, I'm all for that. And if it's to help people get into affordable rentals to reduce their rent, I'm all for that. And I don't think all that money is tainted.
No, I don't think. Well, but it is tainted. If I can just say it this way, it is tainted if there is no accountability attached to it.
That's correct.
So you can have all the best intentions in the world. You can be doing the great work, but if there's no accountability, and that's one of the things I would like to make sure that we're going to investigate some of this stuff. Wilmington Housing Authority, $320,000. What are they doing?
I don't know.
Okay, but
we obviously have a need for housing and affordable housing within the city of Wilmington.
We do.
Your housing authority is a major part of it. It
is.
But I agree with you 1,000%.
And I agree with you, Jay, about the need for affordable housing. And the Woodlawn trustees, they're rehabilitating 60 houses that they have and adding 20 more, right? We've seen in other neighborhoods, including our downtown and riverfront area, people are priced out of that. Right? So we have to make sure that we have housing for individuals who already live here to make sure that they can continue to live here, right? Because it's all a part of the historic culture of the city of Wilmington. Now, the issue is when you don't have that affordable housing, or when it's affordable housing with a mask on, where we have issues. But I think, at least with the trustees, they've done a good job over the years of working with the community and making sure individuals were in there and could survive as well.
I'm going to ask, the News Journal to please help us to look into all of them, because we need to hold them, because we always feel that we are being slighted, because we are.
But one of the things that was reflected in the article that's online today is that they're saying the city's going to take $12 million for the city for $12 million in revenue that it lost as a result of the pandemic. And I said this about the county money as well, so don't say he's just sitting there criticizing the city, because I said the same thing about the COVID money that the county got. We as a county took and said it was X amount of dollars, more than $12 million. It was like $22 million that we didn't get in revenue because of COVID. I said, wait a minute. If you didn't get it in revenue, what about whether or not you had reduction in expenditures because of COVID? And if you had reduction in expenditures because of COVID, it's a wash, and this money should go to something else. And I took that position with the county. I'm taking that position here. If you had a reduction in expenditures because of COVID, then as far as I'm concerned, that money is tainted because it could go to something else. And more than anything else in this city right now, I'm concerned about crime.
Yeah.
Mayor Pazicki
100%
ran the Hope Commission, and he knows full well it was never funded properly. The most money it ever got was $500,000. Here's an opportunity to provide funding, to provide the interventionists, the additional informant money, to hire some civilians to follow, because we're saying we know who all the gang members are. Public officials are saying that we know who they are. Well, what are you doing to monitor them? What are you doing to get them off the street? And we don't address the issue of crime in the city, then the city's going to continue to go to hell in a handbasket, because right now, where are you safe?
Nowhere.
But it's not just that. They should fund that program. They have extra funding, and one of the things I didn't see on here is community centers.
Yes. Matter of fact, but they did say in this article that the mayor was not going to fund nonprofit organizations, because unless they have a proven track record, well, every community center, most of them are got a track record of helping. Jay talked about how these schools used to be open and they're no longer open.
Right.
If you're going to help with the crime, it's a plan that has to be put together, more than just arrest. You talked about the persons that need to be arrested, but what about the prevention? And you talk a lot about that. How do we prevent some of these violences from happening?
We got to give our youth something to do other than just be out there on the streets. When we look at our community centers, a lot of them are underfunded, overworked. They don't have enough money to hire on the staff that they need for programming. You have community centers that are hurting right now. Wear and tear on their vehicles. So now that's halting the access of children who are in other communities who may not have a parent who could drop them off, or their school won't drop them off at the community center. So how can we really help our community centers? You have Hicks Anderson, you have the POW, you have all these West End, you have all these community centers throughout the city. That should be how we're looking to address some of the proactive way of addressing some of the gun violence, right? We've seen historic numbers in 2020, 2021. We don't want to see that in 2022. And with this money coming in, this is how you do it. Let's try to expand the participation in these community centers and get the young kids who are committing the vast majority of these shootings out of that and into something productive.
Yeah, Amazon is taking employees, and Hilltop Lutheran Neighborhood Center did what it could do, but we are afraid to go any further than bring people in for more than $15 an hour because it's not sustainable. So, challenges keeping the community centers open is an ongoing challenge. And you look at the ones who have not been able to be open at all, and the ones who are limited and can only do child care, and that's not profitable.
Right.
No. Let me just say this to you all. For those of you who are watching, and I know that there are many politicians who watch this show because we see some of your moves and we hear some of your comments, and we are very appreciative that you have your own opinion. But I invite you to come to Zion Fair Holiness Center. We don't get any grant funding. We are part of the Purchase of Care program for the daycare, but every night, Sunday through Sunday, a lot of activities going on. We decided to partner with the neighborhood house. Their after-school program, make sure we're offering basketball, soccer, and we have track and field. We have We Are One. The basketball program is now a part of the Zion Fair because we know we could not afford to bring in all the programs and fund them. So we started partnering with organizations in order to make sure that our young people are safe and they have a safe haven. We've been doing this without there being a lot of publicity because that's not why we do it. We don't do it for the publicity. We do it because this is what we are called to do. And the young people are safe. They're here. Or if you come in here on a Saturday, matter of fact, if you come here on a Sunday, if your child track and field is going on Sundays, We Are One basketball is going on Sundays, as well as many different activities. But it's Monday through Sunday. In the evenings, it's always something going on, and everything is for free. We already are in a community that's rich in history, rich in culture, but don't have all the economics that others may have. Where my daughter live at, sure there's a community center right in the development. Sure there's whatever she needs is available. But what about those who are in the city? And that's where my heart has always been. Why? Because I'm from the city. You need to come and look at a model of how you can keep kids productive and active and stop trying to fight the man or the people who are doing something that is right. Now, I'm not saying to you that it's fair that there is no funding, but because there is none, will not stop the program. That's what I'm saying. And we're back. Favorite part of the show. We missed you last week, Kobe, and I'm glad you got back safe. I don't know what mission you were on. I thought you may have ran over to Ukraine and was going to try to do some reporting over there. But I'm glad you're back and you're sound. Tell us what's going on with the Kobe Corner.
Yeah, so first was a huge piece of legislation passed last week, and that is the paid family leave bill, which is up to 12 weeks of a statewide paid family and medical leave program. It passed the Senate, and is now going to the House. It has the support of the governor. The governor had highlighted it in his State of the State address. And this is huge. This helps working class people. It helps those single mother households to be able to ensure that they have job protection as well as take off the time needed when they have medical emergency. So that was a huge piece of legislation that passed on party lines, 14-7, Democrats versus Republicans. So that was huge, and we hopefully it sails through the state house and gets to the governor's desk pretty soon.
Okay.
Next, This past Thursday, the mayor did his budget address, which kicks off the budget season for the city of Wilmington. And again, I want to talk about on March 30th, the mayor's office, the treasurer's office, and city council, their budget hearings start at 4:30. On April 4th, the Wilmington Police and Fire Department go. And I want everyone who has any concerns about what's going on with our police department to be there and sign up for public comment and speak out. License and inspection and real estate and housing and development is April 6th. The Mayor's Office of Economic Development and Parks and Recs is April 11th. And then audit, Human Resources and Law Department is April 13th. And then also you have the Revenue Projects, Finance Department, and IT on April 18th. And lastly, you have Planning and Development Department and Public Works on the 20th, and Public Works follow-up on the 25th of April. So all those start at 4:30. It'll be chaired by the Finance Chair, Chris Johnson. And then you can also have public comment on all of those. So if you have any concerns about what's going on with the city budget and finances, this is the time to go to the meeting and have your voice heard.
Yeah. Now, while you're there, who is the Republican representative on the city council?
James Padola.
Okay, I have not heard much from him. Okay, but that's why I was trying to figure it out.
But at the end of the day, and I'm going to say this because when Matt Meyer presents his budget, I'm going to make a motion to vote for the budget as presented. And as I have said every year for the past few years, y'all not going to do anything to change the budget anyway, so
why
just
go
go and
this?
vote for it now. I don't
Yeah.
think city council is any different.
No, it isn't. That's why I was just trying to. That's why I asked about the Republican on there, just to see if there was some opposition. Just go ahead and vote. Does that have to be unanimous consent? Unanimous consent?
No,
It has to be the majority, right?
Yeah, simple
Okay,
majority.
well, he got the votes. Just pass the whole budget and keep moving because they're not going to change that. Go ahead.
Next up, I want to talk about Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Okay.
She is the African-American judge who was nominated to the Supreme Court by President Joe Biden. It would make her the first African-American woman to serve on the Supreme Court. They will be releasing a date very soon for a Senate hearing, a Senate Judiciary hearing, where our own Senator Coons sits on that. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out to his office, send him questions. I know his staff is preparing him for it. She has been approved and confirmed by a Senate multiple times in a bipartisan way. So there should be no hiccup.
Oh, there's going to be hiccup.
But you have people like Ted Cruz who are already speaking out saying, oh, it should be the most qualified person, not just a black woman.
She is.
But look, pit her resume up against anyone. I guarantee you she wins against
and it always
the majority.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, the fact that President Biden is following up on a campaign promise, but he's also bringing that diversity of thought. Because I'm telling you right now, of the two black people who are going to be on the Supreme Court, between Ketanji and Clarence, their thought trains are going to be completely different.
But at the end of the day, and I know the rest of the nation is giving him accolades for the effort, but to me, it's a wash. Because as chair of the Judiciary Committee, when Clarence Thomas was up, and I, as a local advocate, expressed my concerns, desegregation lawyers across the country were saying you got to get to jail. Of course, I couldn't get to jail. But he let Clarence Thomas pull off the greatest Murphy in the history of the country by sitting there crying about this, a high-tech lynching, and knew full well what was in his heart that wasn't any good for us as a people. And so far as I'm concerned, everything that's been passed 5-4 with Clarence Thomas, Joe Biden should have done the same thing to Clarence Thomas he did to Judge Bork, but he wouldn't listen to me and he wouldn't listen to the other advocates who had expressed concerns across the country. But, you know, I'm just a student advocate, so he and I have never had a conversation, and that speaks for itself.
And Pastor, you asked where I was. I was in D.C. last week. Actually, at this time, we were meeting with the president. and a part of my role as the vice chair of the party and DNC member, and part of the Delaware delegation, we were able to talk with Democratic leaders all across the country at the winter DNC meeting and ASDC meeting. And President Biden addressed the entire body. Hundreds of Democratic leaders were down in D.C. to hear from the president. Now, what we've seen and what we all kind of agreed on and what the president highlighted was just a few months ago, it didn't look too good. We thought that redistricting was going to be a lot worse than it was. But now, instead of us being down 15 to 20 seats, we're probably going to be down 3 to 4 seats with redistricting. And those 3 to 4 seats are still going to be highly competitive. We're seeing the president.
So we may keep the.
We may keep the House. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Okay. But we have a better chance of keeping the House with how the maps have gone and some of the cases we've won. So the fact that we've won with Republican courts in Ohio, in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania. Those are huge states that have a lot of seats that Republicans were going forth and saying that they wanted to completely gerrymander. And the courts, their own courts, are saying, no, you're going too far. The biggest fight is still down in Florida, where Governor DeSantis, he wants a map that goes further than his own Senate and House Republicans want to go. And he's saying he's going to veto whatever they go, and it goes to the Supreme Court down there as well, too. So we'll see what happens in Florida. That's going to be the determinant between the 3 and the 4. It may come down to 1 or 2, or it may go up to maybe 5 or 6, based on what DeSantis gets. Okay. We looked at how Biden being able to nominate Ketanji Brown Jackson has helped his numbers in the polls and helped Democrats. He talked about breaking up and getting key components of the Build Back Better Act done this year ahead of election time. So there's still a lot of work to do, but he's committed to not letting Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema hold up his agenda and looking at ways to work around those two to get things done. So while the meeting was exciting, it was exciting to be in a room with everyone again. It was exciting to get a shout out from the president. We still have a lot of work to do. And I think one of the things that we truly have to pay attention to is look at what we can highlight. The fact is, almost every Republican voted against the infrastructure bill. But yet when they get the money in their districts, they're the first ones right front and center to cut ribbons. Lisa Blunt Rochester has delivered for Delaware with a lot of money. So has our 2 senators. But Lisa is doing a lot of work as our sole representative.
One senator.
One senator.
Go ahead.
And Lisa has delivered as our sole representative in the House to make sure Delaware is getting their needs addressed, especially with our roads, which are now starting to look a lot like PA roads in some places.
Watch it.
So, we have a lot of work to do. But it starts right here, and then it comes down, and then we have to hold our elected officials on the state and local level accountable to making sure they follow through with the projects that they say they want the money for.
Excellent, excellent. Well, look, it's been a long day, and I made your gray get more, and I'm sorry for that, my brother.
But Kobe didn't say that. Number one, the marijuana legalization did not pass, which I am happy about. And I have to shout out to Tower Hill School, who upset the entire state by the boys winning the basketball championship, and nobody expected that, but they came out shooting 3 pointers, and Sally's was done.
I guess I'll give him a little clap. Sally's coming back next year.
Aren't you a Sally's guy?
I am.
Yeah, he don't report on those things. And he didn't report on the marijuana neither, but I'm glad you're here. But I don't know which way to go on it.
The marijuana bill isn't dead completely, so it did fail. And 2 Democrats voted not voting, and 1 voted no, Speaker Swerfkoff. There was a lack of a social equity piece in it that I think if you pass any legalization bill has to be in there.
So now everybody wants to be drug dealers, and the government's had the unmitigated goal to one part of the profit.
Exactly.
A drug dealer is a drug dealer.
Okay. Exactly.
And I don't support it.
Well, we're gonna end on that and say we hope you enjoyed the show today, and we appreciate you so very much. please begin to question your leadership. Question the mayor. Question the county. Question your city council representative. Why are we in the predicament that we're in? This is Dr. Curry.
This is Kobe Owens.
Whatever you want to call me.
J Street. See you, y'all.
Take care, y'all.